Okay, so we are reading the Celestine Prophecy by James Redfield. We are on the chapter, the message from the mystics, page number 141 of the book, of my book, and page 67 of the PDF.
76 of the
76
PDF.
of the PDF.
That's where the memory of evolution stopped, I explained, with humans. I felt as if the story continued, but I couldn't quite grasp it. The story does go on, he said. Humans are carrying forth the universe's evolution towards higher and higher vibrational complexity.
So again,
How?
over here, what is he saying? That as we are evolving, the human mind is also evolving. Let us look at it from the perspective of children, right? When we were kids, we did not know how to use the remote. Today, a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old can use the remote control. So people are definitely evolving. And this also has something to do with the morphogenic field, because as understanding of certain concepts starts to go up, the field, the technology, the ability to do something is there in the field, and all of us are actually receivers and transmitters. So we actually keep downloading a lot of data, and we can use them. Okay, we've talked about the morphogenic field previously, and this is actually, I think, that is responsible for the frequencies to get higher and higher.
How? I asked. He smiled but didn't answer. Let's talk about this later. I really must check on a few things. I'll see you in an hour or so. I nodded. He picked up an apple and walked out. I wandered outside behind him, then remembered the copy of The Fifth Insight in the bedroom and retrieved it. Earlier, I had been thinking of the forest where Sanchez had been sitting when I had first met him. Even in my fatigue and panic, I had noticed that the place was extraordinarily beautiful. So I walked down the road towards the west until I came to the exact spot, then sat down there myself.
So now again, as soon as we connect to nature and we start going into appreciation, number one, we shift to the right side of the grid. And as soon as we do that, we start getting uplifting energy. So we start connecting with the energetic field and rebooting ourselves. That's why being in appreciation is a very, very important thing. Now, you can be in appreciation just mentally, but you will really get the benefit when you really do the appreciation out of feeling as well as thought. So thought and feeling must go together when we are shifting into appreciation.
Leaning back against a tree, I cleared my mind and spent several minutes looking around. The morning was bright and breezy, and I watched the wind as it whipped the branches above my head. The air felt refreshing as I took in several deep breaths. During a lull in the wind, I took out the manuscript and looked for the page where I had stopped reading. Before I could locate it, however, I heard the sound of a truck engine. I lay flat beside the tree and attempted to determine its direction. The sound was coming from the mission. As it grew closer, I could see it was Sanchez's old truck with him driving. I thought you might be here, he said, as he pulled up to where I was standing. Get in, we need to leave. What's going on? I asked, sliding into the passenger seat. He drove on towards the main road. One of my priests told me of a conversation he overheard in the village. Some government officials are in town and they were asking questions about me and the mission. What do you think they want? He looked at me reassuringly. I don't know. Let's just say I'm not as certain as before that they will leave us alone. I thought, as a precaution, that we should drive up into the mountains. One of my priests lives near Machu Picchu. His name is Father Carl. We'd be safe at his house until we can better read the situation. He smiled. I want you to see Machu Picchu anyway. I suddenly had a flash of suspicion that he had made a deal and was taking me somewhere to turn me in. I decided to proceed cautiously and to stay alert until I found out for sure. Did you finish the translation? He asked. Most of it, I said. You had asked about human evolution. Did you finish that part? No. He turned his head from the road and looked at me intensely. I pretended not to notice. Is something wrong? He asked. Nothing, I said. How long will it take to get to Machu Picchu? About 4 hours. I wanted to remain silent and let Sanchez talk, hoping he might give himself away, but I couldn't control my curiosity about evolution.
So again, basically his nature was that he didn't let out information. Okay. And even if someone was there, he was not letting it out. So the same thing has literally kicked in over here. He's raised this, he's got suspicious in his mind, and then he doesn't want to say anything. He wants the other guy to say. Having said that, he may have something to tell the other guy and get some other information from the other guy. I mean, from Father Sanchez.
So, how do humans further evolution? I asked. He glanced at me. What do you think? I don't know, I said. But when I was up on the ridge, I thought it might have something to do with the meaningful coincidences that the first insight talks about. That's right, he said. That would fit with the other insights, wouldn't it? I was confused. I almost understood, but I couldn't quite grasp it. I remained silent. Think of how the insights fall into sequence, he said. The first insight occurs when we take the coincidences seriously. These coincidences make us feel there is something more, something spiritual, operating underneath everything we do.
So again, if we look at it from the perspective of the Gita, Nagarji is constantly saying that Bhagwan Adhar hai, Bhagwan Adhar hai. It's the substratum, it's the substratum. Everything is based on that. He is actually creating, and everything is, of course, our creation, but he is the base on which everything is working. So when we are looking at this, when coincidence start, when we start jacking into the field, then things start happening spontaneously. We don't make them happen, they start happening. Okay, so that's the first insight.
The second insight institutes our awareness as something real. We can see that we have been preoccupied with material survival, with focusing on controlling our situation in the universe for security. And we know our openness now represents a kind of waking up to what is really going on.
So after the industrial revolution, society as a whole, the world as a whole has gone after the materialistic aspect of things. The spiritual aspect had got left behind. We started wanting to control our environment for our own benefit.
The third insight brings a new view of life. It defines the physical universe as one of pure energy, an energy that somehow responds to how we think.
So this was what the talk was about yesterday, that everything is energy, and energy has consciousness. So the our thoughts will start to affect whatever is happening around us. So what we are thinking becomes extremely important. So Robert Monroe also automatically said the first step is you need to start becoming responsible for yourself. Once you become responsible, the next step would be to start watching your thoughts, because we are in a thought responsive universe. Everything that we think will start to manifest. And then, of course, ultimately we get escape velocity to move out of this system, which in Gita terms would be moksha. But the first step in this entire game, or one of the main steps, is starting to watch our thoughts, because our thoughts affect everything. So this is what he's saying over here, that the universe is made of pure energy, and the energy somehow responds to our thoughts.
And the fourth exposes the human tendency to steal energy from other humans by controlling them, taking over their minds, a crime in which we engage because we so often feel depleted of energy and cut off. This shortage of energy can be remedied, of course, when we connect with the higher source. The universe can provide all we need if we can only open up to it. That is the revelation of the fifth insight.
So again, we are constantly wanting to grab energy from the other person. So one-upmanship, the crab mentality, pull the other guy down so that I can go up. So competition starts coming into the frame. Okay. Having said that, the next insight will talk about how we can jack into the universal consciousness to replenish ourselves without having to take energy from another person and deplete another person to enrich ourselves.
In your case, he continued, you had a mystical experience that allowed you to briefly see the magnitude of energy one can acquire. But this state is like and glimpsing the future. We can't maintain it for a very long. Once we try to talk to someone who is operating in normal consciousness or try to live in a world where conflict is still happening, we get knocked out of this advanced state and fall back to the level of our old selves.
So now,
And then,
as we go into an expanded state of consciousness, to be able to hold that state with resilience is not such an easy task. Now, that is the beauty of the Monroe process, which allows you to go into these states and actually resiliently hold it there. Generally speaking, it takes decades for anyone to even achieve this state, let alone hold it for more than a few minutes. But within very short time, you are able to go into these states because of the technology.
and then he continued, it is a matter of slowly regaining what we glimpsed, a little at a time, and to begin a progression back towards that ultimate consciousness. But to do this, we must learn to consciously fill up with energy because this energy brings on the coincidences, and the coincidences help us actualize the new level on a permanent basis.
So now this is exactly what is happening in the Monroe process again. Okay. So you in the workshop, you glimpse that this is possible. You get the tools to be able to go into these states of consciousness. But again, the more you practice it, the better you will be able to hold these states of consciousness. Okay. And as we start going into them, you will find that the coincidences, you start jacking into the field. So things start happening again instead of you making them happen. So effortlessness rather than effortfulness starts to become your mantra.
I must have looked puzzled because he said, think about it. When something occurs beyond chance to lead us forward in our lives, then we become more actualized people. We feel as though we are attaining what destiny is leading us to become. When this occurs, the level of energy that brought on the coincidences in the first place is instituted in us. We can be knocked out of it and lose energy when we are afraid, but this level serves as a new outer limit which can be regained quite easily. We have become a new person. We exist at a level of higher energy, at a level, get this, of higher vibration.
So now, as we start progressing in the levels of consciousness, we start connecting with the subtler and subtler and subtler levels of consciousness. That becomes our new norm. That's why it's very important to keep raising the bar. As we raise the bar, then that state becomes our normal. It's not that you will not have your ups and downs. It's not that you may not get you won't get angry or you won't get irritated or you won't feel dejected. but your resilience in bouncing back will automatically start to get enhanced. So as that starts to get enhanced, you'll start being able to hold that state of consciousness more and more and more and more. And slowly you will not slip out of that state also. You'll be constantly in that state. As I mentioned, Bob Holberg, he, I keep mentioning this. He said that this village in South America, all the villagers were constantly in focus 12, and there was no Jamela in that village. They didn't have doors, and there was total community living. Everyone looked after each other. Why was that? They were operating at that higher state of consciousness. So that suspicion, guilt, selfishness, all those things went out of the window. Shimangla?
Yeah. Can you see the process now? We fill up, grow, fill up, and grow again. That is how we as humans continue the evolution of the universe to a higher and higher vibration.
So again, it is always one step at a time, just one step at a time.
He paused for a moment, then seemed to think of something he wanted to add. His evolution has been going on unconsciously throughout human history. That explains why civilization has progressed and why humans have grown larger, lived longer, and so forth. Now, however, we are making the whole process conscious. That is what the manuscript is telling us. That is what this movement towards a worldwide spiritual consciousness is all about.
So previously, evolution was taking place at an unconscious level. Everything was evolving, but now we can force the pace, or we can hasten the pace or speed up the pace of evolution, because we are now able to do it consciously.
I was listening intensely, totally fascinated with what Sanchez was telling me. So, all we have to do is fill up with energy, as I learned to do with John, and the coincidences begin to happen more consistently. Well, yes, but that's not as easy as you think. Before we can connect with the energy on a permanent basis, there is one more hurdle we must pass. The next insight, the sixth, deals with this issue. What is it? He looked squarely at me. We must face up to our particular way of controlling others. Remember, the fourth insight reveals that humans have always felt short of energy and have sought to control each other to acquire the energy that flows between people. Fifth then shows us that an alternative source exists, but we can't really stay connected with this source until we come to grips with the particular method that we as individuals use in our controlling and stop doing it, because whenever we fall back into this habit, we get disconnected from the source. Getting rid of this habit isn't easy because it's always unconscious at first. The key to letting it go is to bring it fully into consciousness, and we do that by seeing that our particular style of controlling others is one we learned in childhood to get attention, to get the energy moving our way, and we are stuck there. This style is something we repeat over and over again. I call it our unconscious control drama.
So the control drama, okay, this is a very, very important part of this entire book, according to me. And I have really picked up on this particular thing. How do we how do we behave in order to grab energy from the other person? And we need to make ourselves aware of this, that how are we grabbing this energy, and what is the attitude that I am using to draw energy from the other person. Now, until we can transcend this attitude of wanting to grab energy from another person, we cannot connect to the universal energy. Because if I am focused on grabbing energy from a normal person, I am not connected to the universal consciousness. I am not connected to the universal energy field. Okay. So the idea is to become aware that I am going into my control drama. And this starts getting ingrained from when you are a child. How are you behaving as a child will determine how you're behaving later on, unless you bring conscious awareness into that behavior.
I call it a drama because it is one familiar scene, like a scene in a movie, for which we write the script as youths. Then we repeat the scene over and over in our daily lives without being aware of it. All we know is that the same kind of events happen to us repeatedly. The problem is, if we are repeating one particular scene over and over, then the other scenes of our real life movie, the high adventure marked by coincidences, can't go forward. We stop the movie when we repeat this one drama in order to manipulate for energy.
So again, it's like a stuck record player going round and round and round and round. We are constantly doing the same thing. Okay. So whenever we have a pattern in our life, it makes it very, very important for us to pay attention to the pattern. This is again in the excursion workshop also. In one of the exercises, we actually tell people in the evening that, you through the night, go through your life and see what kind of events have been repeating in your life. Because if you're not able to transcend these events which keep happening in your life like a broken down record player, your progress will definitely get stunted because you're stuck in a record player. You're not moving forward. So transcending these patterns becomes extremely important.
Sanchez slowed the truck and moved carefully forward through a series of deep ruts in the road. I realized I was frustrated. I couldn't quite grasp how a control drama worked. I almost expressed my feelings to Sanchez, but I couldn't. I realized I still felt distant from him and I didn't care to reveal myself.
So now again observe what is happening to the hero. His control drama is that he gets aloof and he doesn't want to communicate. So he keeps falling back on that same control drama. Now, when he goes into that drama, the other guy is going to ask him, okay, what's happening? Why aren't you saying anything? So he's grabbing their attention by being aloof.
Bhaiya,
Uh,
is he that he's listening to his intuition? Maybe he's getting that
but
feeling that there's
yeah,
something
but if
wrong.
you really see when he's listening to his intuition, when you're reading the book also, is if you assess it from the left side and right side of the grid,
Hmm.
okay, which side of the grid is he operating from?
At the moment from the left.
Exactly. So if you're operating from the left, then 90% of the time you will not get the correct intuition also.
But then he's
Because
operating from the left because he has that intuition.
maybe, I'm not doubting it, okay. But having said that, whatever the field that is being generated by Sanchez, of course, he is in a high risk zone. He's in a high, I mean, there's a lot of tension. People are after him and all that stuff.
Yeah.
That's a given. So naturally, that suspicion is bound to be there.
Hmm.
Okay, but within that factor, he also has to see how Sanchez has operated.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
If you look at all the actions that Sanchez has taken,
Hmm.
there is nothing really to feel any kind of a threat with him,
Yes, yes.
technically speaking. Okay, but the hero's attitude is this aloof attitude.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
So he goes into his rut every time.
Okay,
This is what I was wanting to say. Of
okay,
course, I don't know. I forget, but Sanchez is a good guy. We know that he's a good guy.
okay.
Having, but even from the energy, when we are
Huh.
reading, it doesn't feel that Sanchez is a bad fellow.
Huh. Okay, thank you.
Did you understand? He asked. I don't know, I said curtly. I don't know if I have a control drama.
So now again, just watch his words, okay? So he is getting irritated by this. Okay, because he's acting out his control drama, he is getting irritated by the question that Sanchez is asking. But he did not need to get irritated by the question. He could have just been in a normal state of consciousness and answered it.
Yeah.
You get that?
Yeah. Yeah.
You get the feel of it, right?
He looked at me with the warmest regard and chuckled out loud. Is that so? He asked. Then why do you always act so aloof?
So now see, he said it, right? Because every time he goes into a control drama, the hero goes into an aloof state. So Sanchez has called it out right in the front. So if you want to transcend something, you have to call it out. You have to face it. Only then you can transcend it. So
Yeah.
unless you face it and then you accept it, the first one is awareness. The second is accepting it. The third is finding a solution to be able to transcend it. Fourth, implement the solution. And fifth, observe whether the solution is working or not. If it's not, go back to three. So over here, it's very clear that he whenever he wants to draw energy from the other person and he feels depleted, he goes into an aloof state of consciousness.
Clearing the past. Ahead, the road narrowed and bent sharply around the sheer rock face of the mountain. The truck bounced over several large rocks and slowly proceeded through the curve. Below, the Andes rose in massive grey ridges above banks of snow-white clouds. I looked at Sanchez. He was leaning over the steering wheel, tense. For most of the day, we had been scaling steep inclines and edging through passages made more narrow by fallen rock. I had wanted to broach the subject of control dramas again, but the time seemed inappropriate. Sanchez appeared to need every ounce of energy for driving, and besides, I wasn't clear on what I wanted to ask. I had read the rest of the fifth insight, and it had echoed exactly the points Sanchez had related to me. The idea of getting rid of my style of controlling seemed desirable, especially if it would make my evolution accelerate. But I still couldn't grasp how a control drama operated. What are you thinking about? Sanchez asked. I finished reading the fifth insight, I said, and I was thinking about these dramas, considering what you said about me. I assume you think my drama has something to do with being aloof? He didn't reply. He was staring up the road. 100 feet ahead, a large four-wheel drive vehicle blocked the way. A man and a woman stood on a rock precipice 50 feet from the vehicle. They returned our gaze. Sanchez stopped the truck and looked them over for an instant, then smiled. I know the woman, he said. That's Julia. It's all right. Let's talk with them. Both the man and woman were of dark complexion and appeared Peruvian. The woman was older, appearing to be about 50, while the man looked approximately 30. As we got out of the truck, the woman walked towards us. Father Sanchez, she said as she approached. How are you, Julia? Sanchez replied. The two embraced. Then Sanchez introduced me to Julia. Julia, in turn, introduced her companion, Rolando. Saying nothing else, Julia and Sanchez turned their backs on us and walked towards the overhang where Julia and Rolando had previously been standing. Rolando looked at me intensely, and I instinctively turned and walked in the direction of the other two people. Rolando followed, still looking at me as though he wanted something. Although his hair and features were young, his complexion was ruddy and red. For some reason, I felt anxious. Several times as we walked to the edge of the mountain, he looked as though he was going to speak. But each time I turned my eyes away and increased my pace. He remained silent. When we reached the precipice, I sat on a ledge to prevent him from sitting next to me. Julia and Sanchez were above me about 25 feet, sitting together on a large boulder. Rolando sat as close to me as possible. Although his constant stare bothered me, I was slightly curious about him at the same time. He caught me looking at him and asked, "Are you here for the manuscript?" I took a long time to answer, "I've heard of it." He looked perplexed. "Have you seen it?" "Some," I said. "Do you have something to do with it?" "I'm interested," he said, "but I have not seen any copies yet." A period of silence followed. "Are you from the United States?" he asked. The question disturbed me, so I decided not to answer. Instead, I asked, "Does the manuscript have anything to do with the ruins at Machu Picchu?" "I don't think so," he replied, "except that it was written about the same time they were built." I remained silent, looking out at the incredible view of the Andes. Sooner or later, if I remained quiet, he would divulge what he and Julia were doing here and how it concerned the manuscript. We sat for 20 minutes with no conversation. Finally, Rolando stood and walked up to where the others were talking.
So now again over here, he wants to ask something. He needs to get information from him. And he has information for the other guy. But he'll take an aloof stand. He will not look and he will not give. Okay. So again, he loses an opportunity, basically.
I was perplexed as to what to do. I had avoided sitting with Sanchez and Julia because I had the distinct impression they wanted to talk alone. For perhaps another 30 minutes, I remained there, gazing out at the rocky peaks and straining to overhear the conversation above me. None of them paid me the slightest bit of attention. Finally, I decided to join them. But before I could move, the three of them stood and began walking towards Julia's vehicle. I cut across the rocks towards them. "They have to go," Sanchez remarked as I approached. "I'm sorry we did not have time to talk," Julia said. "I hope we see you again." She was looking at me with the same warmth Sanchez often displayed. As I nodded, she cocked her head slightly and added, "In fact, I have a feeling we will see you soon."
So now what is happening here? Julia is connected. When you see the kind of intuitive or the thoughts that the hero is getting versus the way that the thoughts that Julia is getting, there's a very big difference in the feel of what the thoughts are.
As we strolled down the rocky path, I felt the need to say something in response, but I couldn't think. When we reached her vehicle, Julia only nodded slightly and said a quick goodbye. Both she and Rolando got in, and Julia drove away towards the north, the way Sanchez and I had come. I felt puzzled by the entire experience. Once we were in our vehicle, Sanchez asked, "Did Rolando fill you in on Will?"
So now over here, now Ronaldo had information for this guy, but he refused to give him information and he refused to take information because of the control drama, which was aloof. So he could not talk to him.
"No," I said. "Had they seen him?" Sanchez looked confused. "Yes, they saw him at a village 40 miles east of here." "Did Will say anything about me?" Julia said Will mentioned being separated from you. She said Will talked mainly with Rolando. "Didn't you tell Rolando who you were?" "No, I didn't know if I could trust him." Sanchez looked at me in total bewilderment. "I told you it was fine to talk with them. I have known Julia for years. She owns a business in Lima, but since the discovery of the manuscript, she has been looking for the ninth insight. Julia would not be traveling with anyone untrustworthy. There was no danger." Now you missed what could have been important information.
So have you got it? Whenever we are operating in a control drama, we tend to miss opportunities or create problems for ourselves. So he missed an opportunity over here very clearly.
Sanchez looked at me with a serious expression. This is a perfect example of how a control drama interferes, he said. You were so aloof, you didn't allow an important coincidence to take place.
So exactly what I said, that he was aloof. So he did not allow the coincidence. Now, it was a coincidence for them to meet Julia and Ronaldo on the way. There was no reason why they would have been there, right? Now they got off the truck. They started talking. He had an opportunity to talk to Ronaldo. He did not take it. Matter was over. So a coincidence was not utilized. So something which happened spontaneously, he did not allow it to manifest. Again, we come back to the 4 S's also. We've not spoken about the 4 S's for some time, but the first one is swata, that it happens by itself. Okay, so what is a coincidence? It happens by itself. You are not creating it. So the first tenet of the 4 S's is also a coincidence.
I must have appeared defensive. It's all right, he said. Everyone I must have appeared defensive. It's all right, he said. Everyone plays a drama of one kind or another. At least now you understand how yours works. I don't understand, I said. What exactly am I doing? Your way of controlling people and situations, he explained, in order to get energy coming your way, is to create this drama in your mind during which you withdraw and look mysterious and secretive. You tell yourself that you're being cautious, but what you're really doing is hoping someone will be pulled into this drama and will try to figure out what's going on with you. When someone does, you remain vague, forcing them to struggle and dig and try to discern your true feelings.
So you got that. Now he acts aloof so that the other guy pays attention to him and then starts to connect with him. And in that process, he transfers energy to the aloof guy.
As they do so, they give you their full attention and that sends their energy to you. The longer you can keep them interested and mystified, the more energy you receive. Unfortunately, when you play aloof, your life tends to evolve very slowly because you're repeating the same scene over and over again. If you had opened up to Rolando, your life movie would have taken off in a new and meaningful direction.
So now, missed opportunity. As soon as you start playing a control drama, you miss opportunities. You stop saying yes to what the universe is bringing into your consciousness.
I felt myself becoming depressed. All this was just another example of what Will had pointed out when he saw me resisting giving information to Renu. It was true. I did tend to hide what I really thought. I looked out the window as we followed the road higher into the peaks. Sanchez concentrated again on avoiding the fatal drop offs. When the road straightened, he looked over at me and said, the first step in the process of getting clear for each of us is to bring our particular control drama into full consciousness. Nothing can proceed until we really look at ourselves and discover what we are doing to manipulate for energy. This is what has just happened to you.
So now what is happening? We cannot transcend our drama until we bring conscious awareness to it, till we become aware. And then the next step is whether we accept it or not. Many times you'll be in denial. You're seeing that, okay, this is your drama, you know it, but you'll not accept it. And then again, you keep getting stuck in that vicious cycle. You keep repeating the drama over and over and over again in your life. And then naturally, if you're repeating a thing, you're not going to progress ahead.
What is the next step? I asked. Each of us must go back into our past, back into our early family life, and see how this habit was formed. Seeing its inception keeps our way of controlling in consciousness. Remember, most of our family members were operating in a drama themselves, trying to pull energy out of us as children. This is why we had to form a control drama in the first place. We had to have a strategy to win energy back. It is always in relation to our family members that we develop our particular dramas. However, once we recognize the energy dynamics in our families, we can go past these control strategies and see what was really happening.
So anything that happens in your life when you're growing up gets stuck in your field. Okay, it gets stuck in your body system, it gets stuck in your emotional body, mental body, spiritual body. Now, because it is stuck there, it will start causing you to react rather than respond. And the only way to transcend it is to go back to the origin of the idea. This is what happens in biofield tuning also. When we are combing the field, we come to those incidences which are relevant to that particular session. And once you start becoming aware of that particular scene, which happened in your life, you put yourself in a position to transcend it. So now, if you have not eliminated it from the origin, when the thing originated, it will keep coming back later on. You may have cleared off afterwards, but the original incident has to be cleared off. Okay. This there was a story which was said when we were doing the life system training. In that, the trainer said that there was this guy. He had quit smoking for, I think, 25 years or something like that. Yeah, so for 25 years he had quit smoking. And then what happened was they had a 25th year school reunion or a college reunion, and all of them met again in the canteen. Now, as his fellow classmates, they started opening up and started smoking. He could not resist the urge. He had not smoked for 25 years. And he again lit up and he started smoking. Why? Because he had forcefully stopped the smoking, but he had not taken care of it from the origin where he had started smoking in the college canteen just to show that he was able to smoke. So as soon as his other fellow classmates lit up, he could not stop the urge to start smoking. So unless you eliminate the control drama or whatever is the trauma right from the origin, it becomes difficult to get rid of because it will come back.
What do you mean, really happening? Each person must reinterpret his family experience from an evolutionary point of view, from a spiritual point of view, and discover who he really is. Once we do that, our control drama falls away and our real lives take off.
So in the growing up years, in the most formative years, who is the people that you are always with? It is your family. So most of the issues are resulting from the family. And as we saw previously also in, I think in the second chapter, where genetics is created, that if you are in a habit, your children are seeing the same thing, and then it becomes genetically encoded. Okay. So anything that you're experiencing, if you want to transcend it, the first thing is to become aware and then go back to the origin of where the problem started from.
So, how do I begin? By first understanding how your drama was formed. Tell me about your father. He is a good man who is fun loving and capable, but I hesitated, not wanting to sound ungrateful towards my father. But what? Sanchez asked. Well, I said, he was always critical. I could never do anything right. How did he criticize you? Sanchez asked. A picture of my father, young and strong, appeared in my mind. He had asked questions, then found something wrong with the answers.
So now what happened? His father was constantly criticizing him and poking him to give him answers. So, what was his father's game? His father wanted attention from his son, and that was the method he was using to grab energy from his son. Okay, by asking him questions and always becoming critical of him.
Well, I said, he was always critical. I could never do anything right. How did he criticize you? Sanchez asked. Sorry. And what happened to your energy? I guess I felt drained, so I tried to keep from telling him anything. You mean you got vague and distant, trying to say things in a way that would get his attention but not reveal enough to give him something to criticize. He was the interrogator, and you dodged around him with your aloofness.
So, what was it? Now, the control drama of the hero is aloof, and the control drama of his father is the interrogator. So the father is getting energy by being the interrogator, for asking questions constantly in order to draw energy. And the protective mechanism that the hero is using is becoming aloof. So if he becomes aloof, he creates a protective shield around him. Now the intimidator cannot get into him to grab energy from him. So this developed when he was a young man.
Yeah, I guess. But what is an interrogator? An interrogator is another kind of drama. People who use this means of gaining energy set up a drama of asking questions and probing into another person's world with the specific purpose of finding something wrong. Once they do, then they criticize this aspect of the other's life. If this strategy succeeds, then the person being criticized is pulled into the drama. They suddenly find themselves becoming self conscious around the interrogator and paying attention to what the interrogator is doing and thinking about so as to not to do something wrong that the interrogator would notice. This psychic deference gives the interrogator the energy he desires.
So have you got it? Now many people will constantly want to justify themselves. Now this is the result of an interrogator. When you are constantly being criticized about something, you go into the syndrome of wanting to create justification all the time. Okay, so this again is the control drama where the either you become aloof or you want to continue to justify, and the interrogator starts grabbing energy from you when you start wanting to justify whatever action you have taken, because the interrogator is criticizing you all the time.
Think about the times you have been around someone like this. When you get caught up in this drama, don't you tend to act in a certain way so that the person won't criticize you? He pulls you off your own path and drains your energy because you judge yourself by what he might be thinking.
So again, judging yourself, you start becoming critical of yourself when you are in the field of the interrogator.
I remembered the feeling exactly, and the person that came to my mind was Jensen. So, my father was an interrogator, I asked. That's what it sounds like. For a moment, I was lost in thought about my mother's drama. If my father was an interrogator, what was my mother? Sanchez asked me what I was thinking. I was wondering about my mother's control drama, I said. How many different kinds are there? Let me explain the classification spoken of in the manuscript, Sanchez said. Everyone manipulates for energy either aggressively, directly forcing people to pay attention to them, or passively, playing on people's sympathy or curiosity to gain attention. For instance, if someone threatens you, either verbally or physically, then you are forced, for fear of something bad happening to you, to pay attention to him and so to give him energy. The person threatening you would be pulling you into the most aggressive kind of drama, what the sixth insight calls the intimidator.
So what's the intimidator? They will keep getting hobby on the other person and kind of attacking the other person to grab energy from them.
If, on the other hand, someone tells you all the horrible things that are already happening to them, implying perhaps that you are responsible and that if you refuse to help, these horrible things are going to continue, then this person is seeking to control at the most passive level, with what the manuscript calls a poor me drama. Think about this one for a moment. Haven't you ever been around someone who makes you feel guilty when you're in their presence, even though you know there is no reason to feel this way?
So again, what is the poor me drama? That mere paas nahi hai, I'm Deen, I'm Daridra, I need help all the time. And if you don't help me, then this thing will continue happening to me. So again, how is this guy working? He's creating a poor me attitude so that you pay attention to him and then you give him certain alms. So it's like these beggars who are there on the street. Okay, they are creating a poor me attitude so that you pay them. And this happens to a lot of people. They constantly are justifying, they're constantly asking for help, constantly asking for support. They're not willing to do things for themselves. Okay, so it becomes a poor me attitude. They're not empowering. Every time you are in a control drama, you're not working from empowerment, you're not working from a state of consciousness where you are responsible for what you're doing. You want to make the other guy responsible all the time, every time that you're in the control drama.
Yes. Well, it's because you have entered the drama world of a poor me. Everything they say and do puts you in a place where you have to defend against the idea that you're not doing enough for this person. That's why you feel guilty just being around them. I nodded. Anyone's drama can be examined, he continued, according to where it falls on this spectrum from aggressive to passive. If a person is subtle in their aggression, finding fault and slowly undermining your world in order to get your energy, then, as we saw in your father, this person would be an interrogator. Less passive than the poor me would be your aloofness drama. So the order of drama goes this way: intimidator, interrogator, aloof, and poor me.
So again, for control dramas, intimidator, he gets hobby. Interrogator keeps asking questions to get energy. Aloof is staying away. And poor me is making yourself Daridra and blaming the other person that you are doing it. Now there is a connection between all of them. The intimidator is connected with the poor me attitude, because whenever someone is being intimidated, you say, no, 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 I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Okay. So now when that guy starts saying, I'm sorry, he is attempting to grab his energy back from the intimidator. The other pair is the interrogator and the aloof. So that when the interrogator wants to grab energy, he will start asking questions. The aloof guy will become aloof so that the interrogator again gives him energy because he pays attention to the aloof guy. So these are the two tracks: the intimidator with the poor me and the interrogator with the aloof.
I guess you think everyone falls somewhere among these styles. That's correct. Some people use more than one in different circumstances, but most of us have one dominant control drama that we tend to repeat depending on which one worked well on the members of our early family.
So again, what happens? All of us have a nuance of all of them. It's not that we are doodh ka dhula hua. Okay. If we had, then we would all be self-realized people by now. But we all of us have control dramas. But the more aware you can become of it, the better off you will be. So you can jack in more to the universal energy rather than attempting to grab energy from the control drama process.
It suddenly dawned on me. My mother did exactly the same thing to me as my father. I looked at Sanchez. My mother. I know what she was. She was also an interrogator. So you had a double dose, Sanchez said. No wonder you're so aloof. But at least they weren't intimidating you. At least you never feared for your safety. Shall we stop here?
It's 15. Okay. Anyone, anything? I think this control drama business is one of the most powerful things in this book.
गीता जी में भी तो यही सेम बता रहे हैं. गीता जी में भी सेम चीज हो रहा है.
But what happens is that the way it is explained over here, it becomes very, very understandable. So I would suggest that all of us, attempt to pay attention as to where in these four states are we acting. Are we the intimidator? Are we the interrogator? Are we aloof? Or are we operating from the poor me attitude?
We could also look at where we were earlier, maybe 10 years ago, or maybe as a child, and what we're doing now.
Absolutely. So
maybe it could be different people.
Yeah. So by doing a lot of these processes, Bhabhi, all of us have grown, let me tell you.
Yeah.
All of us have grown. So the idea is to be able to understand where we are. Only then we can deal with it. Otherwise, how do we deal with it? It's not possible.
फिर से एक बार बताओ चारों.
Intimidator, interrogator, aloof, and poor me.
Thank you.
But can I be an intimidator with one person and interrogator with another?
Absolutely. But over a period of time, you will find that there will be a pattern. So you may shift between an interrogator and a poor me. So with people who are higher up than you or are more powerful than you, you may become the poor me. And with people who are below you, you may become the intimidator.
Yeah.
So it can work both ways. But over a period of time, if you start looking at yourself, why don't we have some videos here? Okay, so over a period of time, when you actually start looking at yourself, you will find that there is most of the time you will be in one state of consciousness.
Achha.
It will be your go-to. Let's put it that way.
You have one dominant personality.
Exactly.
And the other things.
Exactly. It's your go-to.
Yeah.
Okay, anyone, anything?
Niket, I think this was very, very important. This, whatever, you explained and everything, it really, puts you back to all situations of life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when you look at it, see, I'll tell you, the control drama, number one. Number two, you have the 4 S's. Number 3, you have the 4 agreements that we read, okay? These 3 things, if you start observing in your life, you will find that most of the stuff will get sorted out for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, or at least you understand a little bit more details about it and you feel a little unattached to that.
That is the point, na? You become more aware. And the way to deal with anything is to get aware. If you're not aware, how are you going to deal with something that you're not aware of?
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay, anyone else?
So right, that like maybe 10 years back.
Why don't you start your video? It's easier to speak to someone rather than the blind.
So what Mukul said also was very, very nice that, we change in life and 10 years back, what things were and how we reacted. We don't do it anymore like that, like how much change has happened between us all.
Yeah, so that's the point now, observing ourselves. Only when we observe ourselves, we take a witness attitude to what is happening with us, can we actually grow. Because if you are in the soup, you cannot find a solution to the soup. You have to take a witness attitude.
Yeah.
That's true. Thank you so much.
Thank
It
you.
was
Anyone else, anything before we wrap up? Okay, so see you all for meditation at 3:45.
Thank you.
Ram Ram.
Ram
Thank you.
Ram Ram.
Thank you, Bhaiya.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ram Ram.